Beginning chapter 4 now. The developing person is the topic of this chapter. I think this chapter is the longest, technically, page for page in the book, so there is a lot. Although it's interesting stuff, and it's not a lot of heavy-duty biology, so it's not that hard to remember. It seems second nature for me at this point, of course, but I always seem to forget what you know and what you don't know. So again, please bear with me if I seem to start from the very, very, very beginning, because I have to assume that all of you are knowledgeless in this area. So the developing person. Okay, that's my son, by the way. That's his first Christmas. He was a caterpillar, and he didn't go anywhere but his grandmother's. We just drove over there and basically showed her, and then he came home. He didn't seem too upset. It's Halloween. What did I say?
Christmas.
Whoops, wasn't Christmas. Halloween. Glad my wife is listening.
Yeah.
All right, so what is developmental psychology? It is the study of physical, cognitive, and social changes across the lifespan. I guess you could call it the study of the womb to the tomb. I like that. Here you go. Got all different kinds of babies there. That's the definition of developmental psychology. Let me see what we put. All right, the big question here a lot of times that we're going to go over and over, I know we've already been through this chapter, so that's good. Nature versus nurture. Nature versus nurture. So how much of us is because we were genetically programmed to be who we were, and how much of us is our environment? And it's a constant question. And we'll go back and forth and we'll talk about those things throughout. Here are some questions that you might see when you're a developmental psychologist. Is your IQ inherited or determined by nutrition and early environment? It's a tough question, okay? There's a lot of evidence to both. Is there a criminal gene, or does poverty lead to criminal behavior? Another good question, tough question to answer. Thus far, I have not heard of a criminal gene, so I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm sure a geneticist would tell me if I was wrong, but I haven't heard of that. Is sexual orientation a choice or genetically determined? By and large, it seems in the world of psychology to be genetically determined. Okay, you don't have to agree with me. That's not really the point. Okay. All right, continuity versus stages. Do we develop sort of at a non-stop continuous rate, or do we stop and have stages where we sort of plateau for a while? And the next two slides are going to kind of talk about that. I would say yes to both. I mean, we're always changing. I guess day to day you're changing, but there's also probably a very good, strong argument as we get into Piaget and some of the other famous child psychologists. They were really big on stages, so you'll see that. All right, developmental issues. How much stability versus change? Do we have abrupt changes or gradual changes? And by and large, it tends to be gradual. I mean, it's not like you go to bed one night and, for instance, you don't have a growth spurt over a night. 6 months in a year can be a huge growth spurt. I mean, massive growth spurt. So, but you wouldn't have 4 inches in a night or something. That's not possible, as far as I know. Okay. Do our early personality traits persist through life, or do we become different persons as we age? Oh, great question, and there's so much to talk about here. I'm a big believer that there's certain things when we get the personality to understand. There's certain traits that we all have. I mean, I've always had a very active imagination, as you all know from my classroom. I can be very happy in my little fantasy world and reading my books and talking about and exploring my superheroes, and that has been my whole life, and it's not really changed too much, even though I'm now an adult. But I would also say that definitely from the time I was a teenager, your age, to I changed a lot, in college, and then I changed a lot afterwards. I'm not. I wouldn't even say I'm probably the same person I was when I was 24. As far as my outlook on the world has changed, and my priorities. Your priorities changed big time. I know, you guys are at the big, you're in the middle of the egocentric stage where it's all about you, and that's good. Don't take that. It's not a bad thing. I went through it too, and then, once I decided to get married, then there was a us, and then when I decided to have kids, it's become about them. So it does change. It changes your goals in life and all kinds of stuff. But we can talk about that in class. There's definitely a lot to talk about there. All right. Where am I? I was on 6. All right. So here are my pictures of my oldest son getting ready for his uncle's wedding, and seems very happy there. We haven't worked on his pant legs yet. And the guy there on the side there is me, sleeping with him when he was very young. And those of you who know anything about Noggin or Nick for Kids, the TV, you can't see it right there, but the TV is on, and he had gotten up, and I had to go downstairs, and we were watching Noggin, and it was all these crazy cartoons that just sort of keep his attention, and I guess he fell asleep, and it was probably 6 o'clock in the morning, and I fell asleep. Couldn't crawl yet, so pretty safe. All right, where am I going now? All right. So some questions here. Is there a critical period? Is there a point when in an individual's life that's particularly sensitive to certain environmental experiences? And to some extent, yes. Now the question could be asked. You might be thinking like, was middle school? Is there something I didn't do in middle school? Should I have exercised more? Or, lifted weights? Or, should I have read more books? I would say maybe. That's a tough one. But the things we do know are like after the first hours of birth, there's a lot of bonding that goes on between the parent and the child, usually the mother. Very, very important to have that bonding go on. Okay, I mean literally the holding, the feeding, the smells, all kinds of stuff. Okay, in the first year is very important for trust for a child-parent relationship. It's perhaps, hopefully, some things that you guys don't even think about because you have developed that trust. But the child cries a lot of times. I pooped my pants, and I just want to know somebody's going to come help me out. Okay, and by and large, most parents are up quick and come into a room and help the child. But you could imagine how that child might develop if I pooped my pants, and it wasn't 2 hours, for 2 hours a kid laid there and cried, and then nobody responded. That could cause some issues, especially, with other, more severe issues where maybe the kid hurt himself or things like that. So that first year is very important that the kid knows, hey, I got this at least one person, but hopefully 2 people who will always be there for me, and I have faith in them. And then a critical period. There seems to be a critical period for languages, somewhere around before the age of 10. You want your child to learn languages, and the key thing is at my age, I can learn a language. It's not that I can't after 10 or you after 10. You can learn the language, but by and large, what I've read, what I've been told, is that you'll never master the language, your second language, the way you could have if you had learned it before you were 10. And I think a lot of it has to do with being able to think in that language. I would always be learning, let's say, Spanish, and the whole time I would be thinking to myself in English and trying to convert to Spanish, which would be make it very difficult for me. And that's why, you've got to give people who have come to this country in our first generation and have learned a language somewhere else, it's people poke fun at them, but you got to give them a break because they're trying to do exactly what I'm talking about. They're trying to learn English when they're thinking in either Spanish or Russian or Chinese, they're thinking in those languages and trying to convert, and that causes some problems and some the slight errors in tense and things like that don't make a difference to them when they say it, but we hear it and think somehow many times that they're stupid or something, and that's just absolutely incorrect. Okay. Are there individual differences in stages and critical periods? And the answer is yes. Some people, there is no set time for anybody to grow, either mentally, emotionally, or physically. It's kind of I guess you could say until the curtain's lifted at any given one time for anybody, we just don't know. We don't know when it's going to happen. For some reason in my life, I mean, I'm not usually considered a particularly small guy, but I'm not a huge person. But I grew a tremendous amount in college. I was, very light and fairly short in high school, and caught up. My brother happened to grow, my brother was one of these people who grew 4 or 5 inches in a year, somewhere between I think it was his junior and his senior year, and shot right up, and it was well over 6 feet tall, was 6'1", 6'2", I don't know, but we didn't know when that was going to happen, but then our father entered high school at 6'3". So, he was already well over 6 feet tall in middle school. So, it's different for everyone. I'm sure you've got plenty of stories that you could relay to me. All right, now we want to talk about these types of studies. Well, how do we figure all this stuff out? We figure it out because the type of studies we conduct, where we keep track of people. And there's several different ones. You have a cross-sectional, where your performance of people of different age groups is compared. So if I was going to do a study, a cross-sectional study, and let's say I was just going to, put it all together and do it right now, what I would do is, let's say I want to check out the ability of different kids at different ages to solve a Rubik's Cube. So I might pick some 4-year-olds, and then I'll pick some 7-year-olds, and then I'd pick some 10-year-olds, 14-year-olds, and 18-year-olds, and they'd all be done at the same time. That the whole study would be done at the same time. Okay. Longitudinal is performance of one group of people that is assessed repeatedly over time. So in this case, what we would do is say, hey, what we're going to do is take this group of kids at 4 years old, and we're going to see how they do the Rubik's Cube at 4, and then we're going to come back to them later when they're 7, and then we'll come back to them again later when they're 10, and then so on and so on. A lot more difficult to do this one. Usually costs more money, as well as you lose track of your subjects, because by and large, people don't tend to just sit in one place and wait for a researcher to come back. They have their lives, and they may forget to let anybody know, hey, I'm moving or whatever. So that's a longitudinal. Then you have sequential. And that combines cross-sectional and longitudinal approaches in a single study. So now you have a very involved study, usually costs a lot of money, and takes a lot of time, and you're just testing everybody, and you're following them as best you can throughout their lifetime. And so it's a very, very thorough study. But again, probably the hardest one to complete because you're going to lose track of everybody. All right, I'm going to stop here for this this screencast, and I'll start with conception on the next one. And usually that's a very good lecture because I enjoy it the most because I get to make a lot of you very uncomfortable. And I might go over it again in class just because I love to watch your facial expressions. All right, see ya.